It's not unusual to hear people talking to themselves in public. In fact, most of us have probably had an experience where we're in a department store, perhaps waiting in line or looking and shopping at a particular item on the shelf, and someone walks up behind us. We're aware of their presence, and they say to us, "Hi, how you doing?" And without turning and looking, we respond, "I'm doing good. How are you doing?" And then we turn and discover that that person is a total stranger. And that's even more embarrassing. They were not talking to us. They were on their cell phone connected with an earpiece, a Bluetooth, and they were talking to someone on their phone. And we resume our shopping, a little bit more embarrassed about our actions, of not being more aware of what's going on around us, and not being technically savvy to understand that that happens more often than we would like to think it doesn't. It's actually good for a person to talk to themselves. Most of us do it. Most of us probably do it privately in our homes where we're by ourselves. I know Kathy and I talk to ourselves all the time. She in the kitchen talking about the process of making dinner or preparing a shopping list. And I'm in the office talking about the sermon or something that I have discovered or something that I have read that I want to remember. And so I talk to myself. It has been proven that people who use personal verbal cues function more effectively than people who don't. The case in point, a recent study and research done on the area of self-talk took place at a university where a group of people were brought into a room and they were divided up into equal groups. They were each handed a set of cards that had photos on the front of them of different scenes, perhaps a nature scene, perhaps an object. The one group was given instructions that they were not allowed to open their mouths and talk to anyone or even themselves. The other group was given the instructions that they were encouraged to and had to open their mouths and talk to themselves about the item that they were searching for. And when they were both given the starting moment, the group that was talking to themselves, they were told to find the picture of a banana. And as they were paging through the cards in front of them, they kept saying, "I'm looking for a banana, something yellow for a banana." And 100% of the time, that group that did self-talk found the picture of the banana faster than the other group that had to remain silent. Often when we become discouraged, we talk to ourselves. But the unfortunate circumstances are that in the process of talking to ourselves, we tell ourselves negative things. Things like, "How could you be so foolish to make a decision like that? How could you be so ignorant as to not understand what that person was talking about?" We tell ourselves that we are constantly getting the short end of the stick, that we are constantly being picked on. We have trouble telling ourselves positiveness. Well, we've not been alone in that for a long time. In fact, this morning's passage comes out of the book of 1 Samuel in the Old Testament in the 30th chapter and a single verse, verse 6. And it tells us there that King David encouraged himself through self-talk. For you see, he was a warrior king and he was engaged in battle, defending cities. And two of the cities that they had defended were overrun, and the enemies killed everyone, and those whom they didn't kill, they deported and took as captives. And David's men were so angry and so frustrated when they came across this scene that they wanted to kill David. They talked about stoning David, and David was aware of it. They didn't hide their feelings. And so David talked to himself. Literally, it says he encouraged himself. We live in a community of family, of friends, of even our church family. And there are times when we get discouraged. And there's times when those people aren't available. Our family may not be there. Our church family may not be able to encourage us in our downtimes. And we have to find moments of self-talk. It can be scary to be alone with your thoughts, scary to feel like you're the only one out there at the moment and there's no one to support you. But the truth of the matter is that when it is you and God, just the two of you, you have a majority. And it's good to talk to yourself and to God. It builds us up. I want to encourage us this morning with what I believe are 3 ways that we can encourage ourselves in times of discouragement, in times of loneliness and isolation, when we are sequestered from one another. First of all, when we talk to ourselves, remind yourself of all that God has done for you. You see, the nation of Israel, and even ourselves as individuals, had a pattern where they would disassociate themselves from God. They would intentionally do things that were wrong. They would worship idols. They would bring in other religions to infiltrate the one true religion. They would worship false gods, and the process was always the same. God would warn them over and over, and finally he would discipline them that they would have to live with the consequences of their choices. And eventually they would return to God and find out that God, even in the Psalms, when God punished Israel, he always welcomed them back. He forgave them. He brought them back into relationship with him. Each of us can probably recall times when God has been that faithful God to us, that when we have walked away, when we have abandoned our faith, when we have gone after and pursued things of our own desires and egos rather than the things of God, he has welcomed us back into fellowship with him. He has forgiven us. We can remember the times when God has reached out and met a need in our lives. Maybe it was a financial need that you had at one time in life, and God miraculously provided for that through very unusual circumstances. Perhaps it was putting people into our lives at just the right moment that we needed. It's a wonderful experience to have someone come alongside of us and offer a word of encouragement at just the right moment when we needed that word. Think about those times now. Maybe it was a time when you needed a job. You had lost your job or for uncertain reasons were unemployed. And you were wondering how you're going to put food on the table, how you're going to pay your bills. And God provides. Maybe it was that trip to the doctor's office and the report wasn't very encouraging, and you needed someone to come alongside of you to encourage you. Think of the investment that God has made through his son Jesus Christ for you and you alone. Those are the things that God has done for us. We look back over the times and we see all those times of disappointment and discouragement, and we get down. And maybe that's why the Apostle Paul wrote and he said, think on the things that are good, the things that are worthy and wholesome and uplifting. Tell yourselves about those things. Think on what is good. So the first thing we can do when we are discouraged is talk to ourselves about the things that God has done for us. The second thing we can do is to remind ourselves of what God has done through us. David was that king, a warrior king, a man who knew how to do strategy for battle and military conquest. And that was the very reason why David was not allowed to build the temple. His son Solomon would. David was told by God, you are not the man to build the temple because the temple is a place of peace and worship. You are a man of God. You are my man who was chosen at this time to do what was necessary to do. But we need to remind ourselves that God has used us to help other people. Now we have to remind ourselves in humility, not in a sense of pride of, look what I have accomplished, but to realize that God has used us to minister, to talk to others, to meet needs in other people's lives. It's a good thing to recall that. It's safe to say that many of us, at least maybe I need to speak personally, that I have missed many an opportunity to be used by God to encourage someone else because it's been inconvenient, because I've been fearful, because I have been doubtful. I didn't know the right thing to say at a certain time, and so I chose not to say anything. But yet there are times when I have been able to be used by God to bring forth a word of understanding and knowledge, maybe to encourage somebody who is utterly discouraged and defeated by life. Talk to yourself about those times. It's not prideful, it's not bragging, it's not boasting. It is celebrating with God the times that He has been active in your life and you have felt really good about it. Remember to talk to yourself. Talk to yourself about what God has done for you. Talk to yourself about what God has done through you. And the third thing that we can do in times of isolation and discouragement, when we're trying to pull back together some semblance of order and control in our life, remember to talk to yourself about what God is planning to do with you. Every day in our nation, in our homes, in our cities, people lose sight of the promise and the hope for the future. They become so discouraged, even though you may look at them and say they have everything going for them. They have fortune and fame and family and friends. But yet those individuals lose a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of direction in their lives. Such is the case of a young man that I'm going to refer to as Danny. Danny was a 15-year-old that had, it appeared, every opportunity in life. He was gifted, extremely intelligent, and as a matter of fact, at the age of 15, he was about to start his collegiate portion of his life. He hadn't determined yet whether it was Harvard or Yale, but both of the universities had accepted him into their pre-law program. But Danny was discouraged. He had lost focus and purpose, and he couldn't hold on to the hope for the future. All he could see was the discouragement and the anger and the war and all of the problems that existed in his environment. And so he sat down one day and wrote a note. And in that note, he did a mathematical equation explaining why it was reasonable for him to take his life. And unfortunately, he carried through with that equation. And Danny ended his life at a very young age. Right now, you and I might be struggling with isolation, discouragement, wondering how we're going to put the pieces of a portion of our life that appears to be missing, has appeared to be taken away from us. Dreams, activities that we had looked forward to and we've planned, and we're uncertain as to whether they're going to ever occur. And it's easy to get discouraged. But rest assured, God has plans for you. And those plans haven't changed. And we need to talk to ourselves about those plans, about our hopes, our dreams, our desires, our aspirations that are there before us, things that we want to accomplish and places that we want to go and who we want to become. They're still there. God has promised them to us. Back in the 60s, there was a saying that I haven't heard for a long time, but I heard a lot of it back then. And it was a saying that says, please be patient, for God isn't finished with me yet. That can still be spoken today. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with one another, for God is not finished with us yet. We get discouraged. It helps to talk to others, but sometimes that other person just isn't available. And so we talk to ourselves. It's a good thing. It makes us more functional. And I believe personally that's one of the reasons why God says when he tells you to talk to him and he says, go into your closet and talk to me. Go into the closet and pray. He doesn't literally mean that we have to go into the linen closet and find a chair and sit down in it. He means that we need to find a place of isolation and seclusion, a place of privacy where we can talk to him out loud, express our feelings, our emotions, talk to him about those things that he has done for us, where he has been very faithful in our lives. Talk to him about the things that he has done through you and give thanks. Express gratitude for all of those times that he has used you with great abundance to uplift someone else's spirits, to meet a particular need, to pray for someone. Talk to him about your dreams and your desires, where no one is going to question you. Why are you talking, or who are you talking to? You're talking to God and you're talking to yourself. You're expressing your heart. It is in those times when we can build ourselves up, just like David did. His soldiers wanted to kill him, and he built himself up. He talked to himself. He talked to the God. And so today I encourage you to get into God's presence. Listen to his words. Talk to him. Express yourself. For God is not done with you. He is not through with you. And what he has planned for you are the things that can encourage us and build ourselves up as together, individually, alone, we talk to ourselves about God. May this be the day that you talk to yourself, that you heal yourself, that you become more functional. In God's blessed name, amen.